morning, good afternoon, and good evening from wherever you're listening in the world to this podcast today. My name's Paul Webb. I am the founder of B2B Energy, and you are listening to Energy Speaks Back. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to episode 15 of Energy Speaks Back. Weekly, I present to you experts from around the world. And today we are in the Philippines. Our subject today will be shaping energy management policy. Our objectives are for energy experts to gain a good understanding of energy management knowledge from around the world, which is available today to deliver savings that impact on our planet. Today, I'm joined by an expert from Manila. He is an entrepreneur and an environmental scientist working towards revolutionizing and shaping environmental policy. So, without any further ado, I give you John Altomonte. Good morning, John, or should I say good afternoon? And also, should I say Johnny, because it's Johnny to your friends. How are you today?
Yeah, no, I'm doing great, and good morning right back at you, Paul. It's a pleasure to be on.
Brilliant. It's great to see you again. Obviously, we've been doing some training. We've been working together. Even though you're in the Philippines, we've never met, which is the way of life at the moment, which is really great. So, Johnny, I know a lot about you. So, can you just give us some background to the listeners today?
Right. So just for everyone, I'm currently the CEO and founder of Vern Energy Solutions. We're an energy solutions company. We really focus on sustainable energy here in the Philippines. We focus on renewable energy to energy efficiency, energy management, and energy policy as well. So it's a kind of a fun space. I'm not. It's actually interesting. People usually think I have an engineering background or an energy background. My background actually is science. I'm a scientist by profession. I'm an environmental scientist, and I mean, when you're working so closely with environmental science, trying to combat the climate crisis, a lot of things point you towards the direction of the energy industry. And that's where I thought I'd be able to make the biggest impact. And that's why I ended up going this direction and founding this company. So yeah, I guess that's me in a nutshell.
So that's a big move from science to energy. What's the trigger? What was the trigger? Is there anything particular?
Yeah, so my initial direction actually was in marine ecology. So I was doing marine ecology. I published a couple of papers and studies on it. And in my head, I guess coming straight out of the academe, a little bit naive, in my head, I thought research would translate very easily into policy or into actual practice. So whatever I found, I'd be like, great, now people can do something about it. Of course, that's almost never the case. And that's a bit disheartening. So I decided to kind of shift tack a little bit and move away from hard science and hard academe into being on the ground and making things happen, because I felt like that was where, you know, like it's really up to me whether things move the needle, so to speak, or whether projects live or die, you know. So that really was that big decision point, sort of coming out of the gate from the academe.
So what you've decided to do is to attack the cause and not do the academic side on the effect, which is
Yeah.
quite a step.
Yeah.
And just out of interest, what did you do your thesis in at the end? What was your particular thesis that you had to write? Did you have to write one?
Yeah, so while I was doing environmental science, I was looking at coral bleaching and its effects on coastal ecosystems. So coral bleaching caused by what is essentially climate change. Really strong El Nino effects caused coral bleaching in this beautiful island, and yeah, basically just wiped out a lot of the fish populations. But I actually did just finish my thesis for my master's degree, and that was actually on energy. So I've made the academic switch a little bit also, I guess, into energy. So I just did a study on microgrid policy in the Philippines.
Right. Do you know, Johnny? You're just humbling me at the moment. It's amazing the amount of people that I come across that have got this, that are educated on the academic side, which is quite amazing. And though saying that, I watched the David Attenborough
Yeah.
film, and he actually focuses on the coral bleaching. That was a big area because it's a very good telltale, isn't it, for climate change?
Hmm.
That's
Yeah,
excellent.
absolutely.
So, what have you been doing since? I know you've got your energy services business that you've been developing. How are we doing with that now?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, as is the story with everyone these days, COVID has put a big damper on our business. We had a lot of projects lined up for this year. A lot of them focus on energy efficiency, especially just because, for some context, in the Philippines, we just rolled out a new law, the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act, which is the first time energy efficiency was really given a spotlight from a regulatory perspective. I mean, we are a bit late, of course, because I'd say most other countries have implemented this sort of policy maybe like a decade earlier. But it is pushing the needle in that sense where companies now are mandated to come up with energy management plans, hire energy managers, have all these sorts of energy professionals really working with them. So we did have a number of projects lined up. Some of them have fallen by the wayside because some of these are, of course, when you're doing retrofits or whatnot, they are a bit capital intensive, and capital is a bit hard to come by these days. But I mean, 2021 is starting to look really promising. We have a couple of energy assessments lined up. We have a couple of energy management projects lined up. But I mean, it's a wide open field here, and it's a fun field to be in also.
Yeah. Now you mentioned that the legal side, the legislation that's been developed. Is that capturing all businesses or just certain sizes of business?
So there are certain sizes of businesses. So they're generally delineated into two sizes. And so typically this would include your really large users from your, say, industrial users. And then it segments them into, for example, your smaller commercial entities, right? So I'd say typically a neat way of dividing it would be large scale commercial and industrial on one side, and then mostly your SMEs, your small to medium enterprises on the other side. So yeah, it is quite far ranging, and it also stretches to public entities, so local government, your
Right.
cities, regions. So it is quite wide in its scope.
And is it easy for you to provide us today with some sort of overview what you have to do for that organization?
Yeah, yeah. So really, it's quite simple in terms of compliance with the law. Essentially, you just need to submit a report annually to the Department of Energy. But I mean, for us, what's important, I think, really is just having that report typically will move the needle in terms of getting companies to take actionable steps towards increasing their energy. Because in that report, you're going to find out, for example, how much money you're wasting on inefficient energy usage every year. And in some cases, and for example, some of the previous studies that we've done for some industries, that's in the millions of pesos, sometimes per month, and it's crazy, and
Yeah.
it's absolutely crazy because especially because this law has been so late in coming to the Philippines. Most people don't think of electricity as money, but it's one of the things they spend on every single month. So just having these reports really highlights all the opportunities, and it's crazy. There's opportunities in every corner. I'd say we're one of, well, I haven't looked at too much outside of the Philippines, just outside of a couple of case studies, but we are incredibly inefficient with the way we use our energy here.
Yeah. I've actually been to the Philippines and I can vouch for that. Some of the, you've got some amazing commercial buildings that have just been developed, some shopping malls, etc. I didn't see hardly any LEDs, which is a telltale point for me regarding efficiencies. Now we can take, as Nico would say, we can take this conversation in many different directions. And in the back of my mind, I've got all these questions now you've mentioned this legislation because I am a qualified and certified legislation provider within the UK. So have you had to yourself personally become certified to deliver this report?
So in terms of delivering the report, right now under the law, they're still developing the rules and regulations for certification. So there is a bit of there's a gap, couple of years that we're operating in the meantime in partnership with the Department of Energy, where we can deliver these reports up to a certain standard. But up until the at least the Philippine uh, certification is available, we will uh, cross that bridge when we get there because it doesn't exist yet. We're currently
Right.
looking into other options, though. I mean, there are international certifications for different levels of, say, auditing or energy assessments
Yeah,
that we're
yeah,
looking into to kind of just bridge the gap in the meanwhile.
yeah.
But yeah, at least in the Philippines, there's no national certification yet.
One one thing to possibly look at is ISO 50001,
Yeah.
which is a very good study. So we use ISO 50001 as certifying you regarding the UK legislation of ESOS. So you either do the ESOS assessment, which means, as you say, carry out an energy assessment, or you focus on doing the 2 years of ISO 50001. It's an international standard, and if I was talking to your government as such, that would be something I'd be focusing on, because it's already there. You've already got all the process in place, and it's an energy management system which would be very good to implement there. And it's a standard, and an international standard of that. So it would be a very good process to follow, I think. Have you come across
Yeah.
that before?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I guess to clarify, I think I may have misunderstood. The framework in the law really is ISO 50001.
Ah,
I thought you're talking about an internal certification for, say,
no,
our
no, no.
team, for example. Yeah.
Right.
Uh,
Oh, that's good. So
so,
we're all on the same page. The
yeah,
world is on the same page, which is great.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We're all following the ISO 50001.
So for me as well, for all this to work, everything has to be aligned. So what about your energy suppliers? How many energy suppliers are there in the Philippines?
So when you say energy suppliers, are you talking about, say, technological components, or are you talking about like
Generators,
the
the
Oh,
generators.
right. So in terms of power generation, there are, well, oh, I say quite a lot, but really it's not too much. A couple of large entities have the majority of the market share.
Yeah, yeah,
It's not the most competitive market in terms of distribution. It's even less competitive. The franchise rights for certain distribution utilities are quite expansive. The largest one covers like a quarter of the country's energy users, which is a bit crazy. So I mean, there's that's another policy issue I would say in terms of leveling the playing field, especially if you're an end user. It's really hard for you unless you meet certain stringent requirements, unless you're a very large user, to choose where you get your electricity, who your supplier is. So there's not too much flexibility, I'd say, on that end at the moment, unless you're a large user.
yeah. And the large users get to choose, do they? Even though
Yeah.
from a small list.
Yeah. So as long as you hit, I think the number is currently 750 kilowatt peak, like average,
Right.
then you can basically enter the market and choose who your supplier is.
And what are the challenges that the organisations are having regarding energy management at the moment? Do they have challenges?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the number one challenge is that nobody really has an energy manager. So most companies just chalk it up at the end of the month, right? It's just another bill to pay. So if you look at like in every single assessment we've ever done, if you look at essentially how they record their usage, it's basically some guy going up to an analog meter once a day and writing a number down on a piece of paper. And there's a whole issue of problems just with that. I mean, human
Yeah, yeah,
error for
yeah,
one, misreading. Yeah, there's
yeah,
there's there's a whole ton of stuff that could go wrong there, and everything is quite analog and outdated, especially in a world of smart meters and dashboards, right?
yeah. And is there a smart meter strategy in place?
I mean, a lot of the times like our first recommendation is just get some smart metering done. Understand your energy usage at a very granular level, because really
Yeah,
most companies have no idea where they're using energy, what's causing their high usage, and what time as well. People don't understand that because they take down the whole number at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day, and it doesn't really tell you much. So I mean, we usually just recommend because we do have a lot of smart meters or smart metering options available in the country. It's just that no one really has implemented them widely yet.
yeah. So this is, every question I've asked you, there's a challenge around it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
the key thing really is data as well. That is so critical, and accurate data, and meter readings. It all depends. If you've got one guy and he's always the same guy doing the meter readings, then you've got a chance. But if that isn't the case, um, you can start bringing in errors and issues, and it's hard to then start to formulate an idea of what you need to do, because you can't manage what you don't measure. That's one of the things that I preach, basically.
yeah. No,
Um,
absolutely agree.
so you've often said in this conversation today that we and our. So is there more than one of you in your team?
Yeah, I mean, so we're quite a small and insular team. So really, a couple of my co-founders have been just incredible getting this thing up and running. I mean, technically, Vern Energy Solutions is a relatively new in terms of our name. We were previously known as Green Bay Energy Solutions. We made a switch, kind of a branding switch, and yeah, I have a wonderful team behind me, and they're generally just a bunch of great dudes.
Right. And you're based in Manila?
Yeah, yeah. So we are based in Manila, and right now it's been kind of great just because um, we can basically work from the comfort of our own homes. I mean, a lot of what we're doing, exactly what you said, you can't manage what you measure, what you can't measure. And so a lot of the initial first steps that we're doing is just gathering all the data from
Yeah.
our clients, right?
Right.
Going down the paper trail, plugging it in spreadsheets and analyzing what we can before we actually go on site and figure out what exactly is going wrong.
Welcome to the real world, Johnny, because that's what it's all about in the beginning, getting
Yeah,
into those spreadsheets.
yeah, which is fine. I love spreadsheets. So
Yeah, me too. I think that's one of the best parts of our jobs, really, is the spreadsheet side of it. So I know, um, the Philippines. If you think of the Philippines, it's many. I think there's over 1,000 islands, isn't there? 7,000. Oh, I
7,107.
do apologise to the government of the Philippines for underestimating the size of it. Right. Yes. So how and how are they going to address all of that? Or what percentage of all those islands have going to have the challenge of energy management?
That's a great question, and we're looking a little bit more national scale, I guess. In terms of energy management, really, I'd say in terms of who it's going to prioritize, it's going to be cities, urban centers.
Yeah, yeah,
Just because really, if you're looking at energy usage across the country, it's very, very, very concentrated on major metro areas, right? Your major urban cities and your urban sprawls. When you move outside of that, when you go to the rural areas, if you go to the various islands of the Philippines, one of the 7,000 of them, you're not looking at energy management. You're looking at actually just straight up lack of energy. A lot of these places aren't energized. It's
yeah,
very difficult to build out your traditional grid infrastructure across 7,000 islands. And that, I guess that's part of the reason why I also started looking and I did my study on microgrids was it just makes more sense given the archipelagic nature of the country. It doesn't make sense to build giant grid infrastructure spanning islands. It's just costly and ineffective. So outside of your cities, I think the issue really isn't energy management. It's the lack of it and addressing that. And that's where the other part of our company, the other half of sustainable energy, renewable energy, really comes in.
yeah. And have you got a feel for the percentage of green energy there at the moment?
Green energy in terms of the the total primary energy supply is quite high, but that's mostly when you look at that number, you think, oh, that's pretty great. It's like about 50%. It's the majority. You look into that a bit deeper. A lot of it is, well, mostly long-standing geothermal and hydro. So these are aging assets, so they're
Yeah.
not as effective as they are. And biomass, which technically it's considered renewable energy, but
Yeah.
biomass here refers to people in rural areas chopping down mangroves or forests and using it in their own homes. And
Right.
the usage of biomass in your own homes really is uh, a leading factor in all these other health issues, all these lung issues, cancers, and heart problems. So the picture isn't as pretty as the initial numbers would think. If we're looking at wind and solar, the numbers are abysmal, just fractions of anything else. So, I mean, in terms of renewables, we still do have a long way to go.
Yeah. And what do you think is going to be the prime renewable for the Philippines?
Well, right now, and as I'd say the short term or midterm, it's going to be solar, just because, this is more, I would say, a red tape issue rather than anything else. If you're looking at solar and you're looking at, if we're talking utility scale, it may take 4 to 6 months to get all the permits done, which is still quite lengthy, but it's manageable. And then construction is also a matter of months. If we're looking at, say, wind, right, and everywhere in the world, offshore wind at utility scale, or even like onshore wind at utility scale, is starting to become like one of the cheapest options available. The permitting process for that alone can take years, 2 to 3 years, and that's just doing the pre-development of the project, and that can kill a project. That length
Yeah.
of time just
Planning
getting
does.
permits.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Planning. Yeah.
absolutely. And then you have that couple of years of construction time on top of that as well. So really, it's the easiest, I'd say, to get solar up and running. So I see that really taking off, and especially now that prices have just dropped so much. We do have ready access to uh, very efficient and cheap solar panels from China, because we have a pretty established, say, trade route with China going on now, with various ports coming in and out. So if you have roof space and you have, even if you don't have capital, there's a lot of financing options you can use to get solar now. It just gives you cheaper electricity. It's kind of a no-brainer. So I see that really taking off, at least in the next couple of years.
And I know the Philippines education process is very, very good. Have you got the expertise in your country to deliver all of this, or are you relying on experts to come into the country?
So in terms of people who can do a lot of the technical work, a lot of the engineering work, we have a surplus actually of engineers. So in some cases, we're I know some solar companies who have been looking to export engineers almost, sending them off to, for example, Australia, where there's a lot more projects. So we have a lot of engineers available in the country, almost too much. I guess where we're lacking a little bit are more on policy experts. So and people really pushing things more from a top level view rather than anything.
And when I look around the UK, I see a lot of us grey-haired old energy consultants around who are able to go and do some of this work. Have you got many old boys over there, or are you all youngsters like yourself?
I'd say the in general the industry is a lot older than I am.
Right.
There's not a lot of younger professionals in this space, although that's starting to change a little bit. We're starting to see a lot more startups, um, a lot of startups entering the industry. So I mean that's been pretty great to see. I've been part of a number of accelerators like recently. So I mean that's been that's been quite wonderful.
Right. So there's funding from the government to help develop organisations like yourself.
Ah, no.
Uh,
That's a difficult thing.
Right.
It's not a good place to be for a startup. I would say in terms of access to capital, whether that's through, say, venture capital, your standard investors, or even capital made accessible through government funds and allocations. We don't really have much of that here. I know a lot of startups here have gone to Singapore, where a lot of these are a lot more accessible, because the startup support system there and the ecosystem is just a lot better than here. So that we do have a ways to go. I'd say also there in terms of supporting these younger businesses.
And so tell me, what plans have you got within a next, what's your short-term and long-term plans for your business?
Well, short-term plans is to just get more projects. I mean, that's really the short-term plan. Get things rolling. We want to
Starts,
be able to. Yeah,
good plan, good plan.
I know. Really, just simple, straight to the point. Get more projects.
Yeah,
But it's also good timing because a lot of companies are trying to recover, obviously from
yeah,
COVID-19.
yeah, yeah,
The lowest hanging fruit really is a lot of these are just energy issues. It frees up available capital to try and restructure your businesses or trying to get a business back on its feet. So we're really targeting it from that approach, at least for the short term. Long term, we want to be the go-to guys to design these sustainable energy transformations. There is an energy transition on its way that is clear and apparent. And I mean, we can't afford to be behind the curve on this because that sets back so many different aspects. I believe energy really is the cornerstone of development, right? Of being able to lift people out of poverty, and all these other varying issues that are affecting the country. So we can't afford to be behind in this energy transition. And long term, what I envision and hope is that for Vern, that will be a key player in bringing that happen and making that happen in the Philippines.
yeah. And energy is your third largest expense. Doesn't matter whether it's your personal expense or it's a business expense, and it's a
Yeah.
fantastic area to focus on regarding energy, regarding saving money. That's your first areas. You need to just walk around, see what lights are on, see what air conditioning is turned on, and watch the costs come down. See how you're running your buildings, and that's exactly what you're going to be doing, is just tidying up these organizations and making them more focused on their energy management. Johnny, what I'd like to do is obviously put you on a spot a little bit, and I always like to sort of leave the listeners with something from the Philippines or something from yourself. Is there anything that you can give as a message from you personally for the listeners today as a takeaway?
Oh, that is putting me in the spot. There's a lot of things I feel like I could say. But I guess the number one thing I would say is, again, talking about this energy transition, it's not a one-man effort. It's not a 10-man effort. It's not a 1,000-man effort. It's an effort for humanity, right? It has to really be a collective effort, pulling together various experts from the industry, such as yourself, right? And setting up these sorts of meetings and these sorts of discussions across energy professionals, but also pulling in the end users, these commercial entities, these industrial entities, tying in policy, tying in decision makers, tying in the homeowners. Really, if one piece of that puzzle is missing, the energy transition doesn't happen. And we're stuck with the consequences of what is the biggest crisis we've ever had to face, the climate crisis. So it really doesn't matter who you are, where you are, what you're doing. Everybody has a part to play in the energy transition, whether it's as small as people underestimate flicking off the, the light switch, but
Yeah.
that
Or
saves you,
down, or down.
or down, right? But that saves you not just a ton of money, but a ton of carbon emissions, right? So it doesn't matter who you are, where you are. Everybody's got a part to play in this, and if that doesn't inspire you, I don't know what will.
Yeah. That's amazing. And do you know what? I've asked that question of 15 people now, and everyone's said exactly the same thing in their own way.
I love it.
Which is brilliant. It's amazing how this story is coming together now, and it's really excellent. So, Johnny, look, it's really great seeing you. I really enjoy every time. I'm always amazing. I'm going to share some pictures of your setup because it's amazing. The mic and your headphones are I'm not too sure whose show this is, whether it's your show or my show, the way you set up today. It's amazing. So, Johnny, thank you very much for sort of finding this time today to come on and sharing the knowledge of the Philippines and to the world as such. And it's really good to hear your story. I wish you and your family a great Christmas and a new year, and stay safe. So thank you very much for coming along.
Absolutely. It was my absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me, Paul.
That's been brilliant. Thank you very much, Johnny.
Thank you for joining me today on this podcast, and thank you for my special guest. Please go and check out our website on www.b2benergy.co.uk, where you can see many more insights to how you can manage that third largest expense. Thank you. That just leaves me for one more thing to say. Be safe.